Well, I'm an infectious disease epidemiologist who's spent most of my life trying to work out how best to control different sorts of infections. Now, your question, which is what are the major challenges at the moment, there's a number, and Ebola sort of illustrated some of them in particular. But first of all, we're better able to detect new and emerging infections, so we get more. Secondly, we travel a lot more, we're connecting cities and so forth, so we've got a lot more transmission. If it emerges in Africa, it spreads very quickly to other places. And then I suppose also we're becoming more urbanized, and so we've got huge growth in the number of megacities, particularly in Asia. These megacities, cities over 10 million people, you have aggregates of people. You encroach on environmental areas to expand the city. You bring individuals into closer interface with livestock and wildlife. And we have acquired in our evolutionary history most of our infections via those interfaces. Wildlife originally, still today, a lot from wildlife, but some from livestock as well. Challenges, well, we're not good in terms of presenting these new emerging infections as are they a real threat, either just locally or will they become pandemic. Ebola, very sadly, was an infection normally which is very small scale on a village or few village scale. And with mobility nowadays in rural parts of Africa, it spread into major urban centres and caused a lot of mortality. But Ebola is not a highly transmissible infection. It was never going to become a global pandemic. On most countries' risk register at the moment, if you look at the top register for infectious diseases, it remains an influenza pandemic. And there's a very simple reason for that. It is a very fast timescale infection. The epidemic within a country is typically over in 6 to 12 months, so boom and bust, as it were. So you've got very little time to get your control interventions in place, develop a drug or a vaccine. In fact, you haven't got enough time. And of course, if we have a major evolutionary event in the influenza virus that makes it a little bit more pathogenic, like the previous 1918 epidemic, which caused probably 50 million deaths worldwide, then we'd have a problem. And I think we're still, as a global enterprise, not necessarily, this is not targeted at particular countries, we're not good about thinking very constructively about how we'd address that. And the problems are, with influenza you could develop a vaccine quickly, probably within 2 months. The problem then is regulation of this new vaccine for safety. And in a crisis, our current regulations would be too tight, too demanding. They'd slow the process of getting this vaccine into manufacturing. Then the issue would be manufacturing. How do you scale up in a very fast time scale, producing something which will really make a difference in the world? And big pharmaceutical companies, there are relatively few of them, and they are the ones that have the manufacturing experience. And in some senses, we need some sort of international organization. Probably it's got to involve a number of pharmaceutical companies too, collaborating, not competing, to create a facility where you could react very quickly to a very threatening global pandemic. Now, plans and discussions are taking place on this. And my own personal belief is we need such an institute somewhere, probably either in the east coast of America or in Western Europe, and we need to get governments and the big pharmaceutical companies who know how to manufacture and create these things working intimately together.